Some people panic the moment life becomes uncertain. Others become strangely calm. When everyone else is raising their voice, they lower theirs. When people rush, they slow down. When emotions fill the room, they seem almost untouched by them. At first, it looks like confidence. Sometimes it is. But psychology suggests there are several reasons why someone remains calm during chaos, and not all of them are what they appear. Because being calm doesn't always mean someone feels safe. Sometimes it means they've spent a lifetime preparing for uncertainty. Imagine you're standing in an airport. A flight has just been canceled. People immediately surround the help desk. Voices become louder. Phones come out. Frustration spreads through the crowd. But one person quietly steps aside. They check alternative flights, book a hotel, call family. Within minutes, they've solved a problem that everyone else is still reacting to. What makes them different? It's easy to assume they simply don't care, but often that's the opposite of the truth. They're simply directing their energy toward what they can control instead of what they can't. And that small psychological shift changes everything. Here's the first hidden layer. People who stay calm during chaos usually separate events from emotions. Most of us experience them as one. Something unexpected happens, our emotions immediately decide how serious the situation feels. But emotionally resilient people create a small gap. The event happens first, their reaction comes second. That pause may last only few seconds, yet inside those seconds, the brain asks a powerful question. What actually needs to happen next? Instead of, why is this happening to me? That single change transforms panic into action, because emotions are excellent at telling us something matters. They're not always the best at deciding what to do next. But not everyone learns this skill in the same way. For some people, calmness comes from emotional maturity. For others, it comes from experience. Think about someone who has lived through repeated uncertainty. Financial struggles, family conflict, health problems, unexpected loss. After enough storms, the brain begins recognizing a pattern. I've survived difficult days before. That memory quietly reduces fear. Not because today's problem is small, but because yesterday's survival became evidence. Confidence isn't always believing nothing bad will happen. Sometimes it's remembering that you've handled worse. Then there's another possibility that people rarely talk about. Some individuals stay calm because they learned very early that showing panic didn't help. Maybe they grew up in a household where emotions made situations worse. Arguments became louder, stress became contagious. Nobody stayed in control. So they unconsciously adopted a different role. The calm one, the peacemaker, the observer. As adults, this can look like remarkable emotional stability, and sometimes it is. But occasionally it's emotional adaptation. They learned to hide their fear because expressing it never felt safe. Which means calmness and inner peace are not always the same thing. The quietest person in the room isn't always the least afraid. Sometimes they're simply the most practiced at carrying fear silently. There's another fascinating psychological pattern. People who remain calm often have a different relationship with uncertainty. Most anxiety comes from trying to predict every possible outcome. The mind races ahead. What if this happens? What if everything goes wrong? What if I can't fix it? But calm thinkers, have you ever noticed that during emergencies, there's usually one person who naturally takes charge? Not because they're the loudest, but because everyone else unconsciously begins following their emotional state. Psychologists call this emotional contagion. Emotions spread through groups remarkably fast. Fear creates more fear. Calm creates more calm. That's why one composed person can completely change the atmosphere of an entire room. People don't just listen to confidence, they borrow it. But here's the belief that deserves challenging. Many people assume staying calm means suppressing emotions. That's not what emotionally healthy people do. Suppression says, I'm not allowed to feel this. Calm says, I feel it, but it doesn't get to control my next decision. Those are completely different psychological processes. One buries emotion, the other acknowledges it without surrendering to it. That's emotional regulation, not emotional avoidance. Interestingly, people who stay calm also tend to focus less on blame. When chaos appears, many minds immediately search for someone responsible. Who caused this? Whose fault is it? Who made the mistake? Calm thinkers usually ask something more useful. What's the next best move? Because assigning blame rarely solves immediate problems. Of course, not everyone who appears calm is emotionally healthy. Some people become emotionally numb after prolonged stress. Others disconnect from their feelings entirely. From the outside, numbness can resemble confidence, but internally, they're very different experiences. Real calmness feels present. Numbness feels distant. Real calmness notices emotion. Numbness stops feeling it. That's why psychology reminds us never to judge someone's internal world by their external appearance alone. So how do people become genuinely calmer? Not by eliminating stress. That's impossible. Instead, they practice returning their attention to what remains within their control: their breathing, their next decision, their priorities, their perspective. Every time they do this, the brain slowly learns something important. I don't need certainty before I can take action. That lesson becomes resilience. And resilience isn't something people are born with. It's something repeated experience quietly builds. The next time life feels chaotic, pause before reacting. Ask yourself one simple question. What actually needs my attention right now? Not tomorrow, not every possible outcome, just this moment. Because chaos often convinces us everything is urgent. Reality usually isn't. Most problems become easier the moment we stop trying to solve 10 of them at once. Perhaps that's why the calmest people rarely appear in a hurry. They understand something many of us forget. Panic feels productive, but it rarely is. A racing mind mistakes movement for progress. A calm mind creates clarity, and clarity almost always makes better decisions. So if you've ever wondered why some people seem almost unshakable during life's hardest moments, it may not be because they fear less than everyone else. It may be because they've learned that fear doesn't deserve the final vote. Because real strength isn't the absence of emotion. It's the ability to keep moving wisely, even while emotion is present. And perhaps the strongest people aren't those who never experience chaos. They're the ones who refuse to let chaos decide who they become. Subscribe to Minds Over Habit.